So this week is software. So now we're not looking at the outside of the computer, the inside of the computer. We're looking at the inside, the brain of the computer, the heart of the computer, maybe, right? Because the brain's kind of the CPU. The heart is the hard drive, which holds the operating system. The operating system is actually like the function, right? That's what we're using to be able to use the computer, the whole body of the computer and everything and how it pulls it all together. You're going to cover a lot of that within this chapter. Chapter 4 is a real busy chapter. So this is the announcement that I had sent you guys, and make sure that you know that you have to read chapter 4. You do have a lot of labs that are going on for you this week, which is great. So it looks like the chapter is very big, but believe me, there's a lot of labs, so there's a lot of fun in there too. Labs and quizzes are all in there. Um, Again, read the instructions on the left side scenario window carefully so you can complete all the tasks given and to get a complete score. Um, Also, you have an unlimited attempts for each quiz. Same thing with the labs. These are unlimited. So you can go back. If you missed something from last week or the week before, you can go back and complete those. Try to get 100 on those. Redo them until you get those hundreds. You could possibly make a 4.0 in this course if you get all your quizzes and stuff done because they give you so many attempts to do that, right? So definitely work on that. You always need those extra points for your GPA. Your Yeah. You know, when it comes to abbreviations, sometimes with all the abbreviations in IT itself, and I'll say of them like GPA, did I say that right? It's not GPU, it's GPA, our grade point average. I get confused. I think there's a lot of things confusing me now the older I get. It's okay. I'll make it. So I did put the PowerPoints in here if you want to look at those too. Good. You heard GPA. Good. I never know what I'm saying sometimes. Um, So the PowerPoints can help. There is information in the notes section of the PowerPoints, so that might help you out as well. I'm just not going to pull up all these PowerPoints and go through them that way. I think because they're not functioning in a sense of where it's going to be a lot of movement and stuff. I think I get more information there, and I can pull more examples for you when I go through the chapters with you. So we definitely will go through test out. Okay, so let's go here. I already pulled this up. Pull this separately like that. Okay, so your outcomes this week, your basic outcome is to explain different types of software applications. By the end of this, you should be able to because there's so much in there. But they are short chapters to read. There's a lot. I think the nice thing about TestOut is it moves quick. You can piece it out, really. It's a big chapter, but you can piece it out, which is nice. The whole point is by the end of this week, you should be able to identify and describe and explain these different areas like basic functions of of computer operating system, the purpose of other types of software and systems, plus such as BIOS, device drivers, and utility software, performing file management tasks on both Windows and Linux. And then let's see, configure, use, and troubleshoot application software, and then configure software applications to send files to a printer. So much. Yes, it is. So there's so much. If it's new to you, you will get a lot out of this chapter. A lot. It's really going to delve into the operating system. And software itself is pretty much standard, the way that it's made and the way that it's done. So, because mostly if you've gone into um, something like Word, other ones are going to be very similar. They're all going to have file, home, um, edit, settings, undo, redo, that kind of stuff is pretty much standard when it comes to software. Okay, so that you'll see it's repetitive. And that's good. You don't want to go into something that is not standard because then you will get lost. Back in the day when we were doing websites, they were very what we used to call um, monkey meat. I think it was called monkey meat. And it was just a lot of links, a lot of pictures, very sporadic. And I'm talking about early, late 80s, early 90s. It was really just kind of all building and designing. We want to get all the information we can out there. We want to get it across the world, on the internet. We want everybody to know about it. Well, with that came very sloppy and ugly websites, which were just so disastrously informational that they were just not functioning very well at all and didn't do much for people. Luckily, we've gotten better at that. We've started realizing that, you can focus on the main information that's needed and have pages and different sections for things. So they've gotten better at it. I don't know if we just thought that, you get one page and that's it and everything should be there. I mean, it's like that now, but we've got functions now in different software languages, developing languages, that it makes it much cleaner. Okay, so you will be reading chapter 4, and I'm going to move on a little bit here because you have the discussion for this week as well. So the discussion this week is about virtual machines, VirtualBox. So you're going to go to research Oracle's VirtualBox. Definitely a great tool, especially if you're a software developer. But for a lot of different reasons, why VirtualBox is useful. And that's your job, is to find out what are some primary reasons why the software is used, the key benefits, the disadvantages, and risks. While there are some risks, there are not many. Although virtual boxes are used for, quite a different good amount of things. So mine here pretty much outlines the basics of it, reasons, key benefits, and advantages and risks. To understand it better, and I look at it in a sense of basically software development. So you probably use it more in that sense. But there are different reasons, like here, just in for school too. If you set up your system, depending on the size of your hard drive and RAM and CPU and all that, setting up a virtual machine can be very useful because if you have a Mac, say you have a Mac, start a virtual machine, in that virtual machine, you can put Windows in it. Just depends on the size of your hard drive and RAM and everything, like I said. And with that means that you can go ahead and you won't have to buy another computer to do, because Purdue is Windows based. We do everything with Windows. We don't do it with Chromebook or Google or any of that. Even though, funny enough, the instructor email is Google, we use Windows for everything. Microsoft. The internship uses Microsoft and Azure. So they're looking into using Google for a disaster recovery. If we needed to recover it because for some reason somebody messed up, a disgruntled intern or something that had access might sit there, and which has happened. We lost one of our servers because of a disgruntled intern. And but luckily enough, we had everything backed up. But that made us move out from a regular server type system and go to something more like, we went to Google. We weren't happy with Google, so we went to Microsoft Azure. But you never know when something happens to that. You want to make sure you have your backup. So this is where a virtual machine comes into place, right? Instead of having a whole other process, right? Yeah, I really like Azure. For us, having a virtual machine would be like going to Google. If our system goes down, we would go to Google. We'd automatically have everything set up to go that way. Um, but with your desktop or laptop, you might want to have a virtual machine, a virtual box. You know, just simply that. You get VirtualBox to go ahead and set up a virtual machine. And like I said, it does depend on your hard drive. So let's say when you start up, and I'm going to give you the example. Now, when you certify for the course, we had to build a virtual machine. That's what they had to do. That was the whole point of the lesson. And what they did was they downloaded VirtualBox, they set that up and installed it, and then they would install Lubuntu. And we used Lubuntu only because we had an emulator for Lubuntu in case people couldn't use it or couldn't figure it out on their systems. We did have an emulator that was online for Lubuntu to answer the questions and stuff. But anyways, we set it up with a virtual machine. And what you need to know is when you set up a machine, a virtual machine, is the size, the parameters of your hardware, right? Because it's going to ask you how many, what's your base memory? How many processors do you have? Um, core, and that's how many core processors do you have in your CPU? Mine has 8. So I could use 2, which really Lubuntu doesn't really need more than 2. 4 would have been really nice. 4 makes it real smooth. But then you have 4 for everything else you're using. So you want to make sure you have enough because you're going to be sharing the space of your system with your virtual machine. And base memory is the same thing. So, you know, as you put in where it's going to go, you had all this that they had to decide on how they wanted to do. The disk space, how much of the hard drive was going to be used, 10 gigs. Okay. Now the memory itself, I only used like I think I used 4 gigs. Yeah, I used 4 gigs of memory of RAM, and then I used 10 gigs of hard drive for it because it's so small. It's not needed. That's such a small operating system compared to something like Windows. Windows, depending on your hard drive, it will use as much as it can, and it's called bloatware. It will bloat your system with all of this other stuff you don't need. So that's why you always want to be careful what it is that you're installing. You got to read the fine print on the installing because it'll say, do you want, McAfee and everything else added to it, where you don't need. If you got Defender, you don't need the rest of them, right? Some people might argue the fact on that one, but that's okay. I have Defender. I've never needed anything else. What I do use is Malwarebytes to clean it out once in a while, just to figure it, just to make sure it's clean. And then it shows you this. So we go in, and then once you have that done, which takes really 10, 15 seconds to really start your virtual machine, because that's all you got to do is boom, 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 decide that, click, click, click. Now you have a virtual machine. That's really all you do. Okay, so now I have one, and now I'm going to put an operating system in it. So you decide to create a virtual optical disk from that. You are adding Lubuntu to it, or whichever. You could add Linux. You can add any of the 500 different Ubuntu styles to this virtual machine. Depends on what you want. We use Lubuntu, like I said. Okay, so you put it in there, you're ready to go, start it up, you start installing it. This is how it looked when it was installed. And what we liked about it is we had them also use it with it was, oh my gosh, I have to go back to this folder over here and see it. What did we call it? It was LibreOffice. LibreOffice itself is like Windows, and it has all the different variations of it, where it has um, a PowerPoint of its own, it has an Excel of its own, it has a design, um, Visio, Publisher. It has all those, and even what we were using it for was LibreOffice Base for Windows, Microsoft Access. So because we had a database portion of it, they needed to have Microsoft Access. So we used LibreOffice Base if they couldn't get access. So that's the point. Make yourself a virtual machine, set up whatever operating system you want on there. You can, if you have a Mac, set up a virtual machine, put Windows in it, then you're all set. You don't have to buy a Windows laptop or something else to be able to do everything within um, Purdue. You will need parallels, I think, is what you need with your Mac system to be able to do that with. But again, Google's your best friend. I mean, YouTube's your best friend. So get on YouTube and find out what they say, how to do all that. But the possibility is there with the virtual machine, and that's the best part of it. It creates the hard drive for you completely, and then you have a beautiful screen with Lubuntu with an L and LibreOffice and games and whatever else you want to. Literally, and it takes 10 gigs, right? I took 10 gigs of memory off of my hard drive for this. Whereas if you look to see what Windows has, it's tons, tons more. Okay, so I'm just saying. Which also means that there are other things that you can do with it. Okay, so that's basically where it comes down to a virtual machine and the uh, reasons and key benefits of using one. Now, of course, when it comes to software developers, they use it for testing. They test the code to see how it works, and they can test the code by having several virtual machines. They can put different operating systems on it and test the code with each operating system to see how that works with each one as well. So there's a lot of benefits. There's so much that goes on with this. So this should be a good conversation piece for y'all. All right, let's find out where I am now. We're at reading. No, discussion. So it is discussion. Am I over here? I knew it was going to take me there again. Go to the next one. And the next one. These are the labs that you'll be doing within the areas of what you're going to be reading. There's a lot of labs that go with it too. So that's why the chapter itself looks like it's very long, but there are a ton of fun labs to go with it. Okay. A lot of stuff that it's going to teach you as you go along too. And this is, like I said, this is not just an overview. Most, IT fundamentals, IT concepts, but we're really IT fundamentals for the ITF Plus CompTIA certification. It is an overview of everything within what you're working with IT. It is an IT fundamentals course. Okay. So you're going to learn a little bit of everything, not a lot of one certain thing. Okay. And that's why the A plus certification is really good because that really gets into more related towards the system itself, the operating system itself, and now has gotten into Android and tablet and all those systems and IoT, I think, is A plus now. So it's gotten even further into that a little deeper. So it's good to have ITF plus, A plus, and then you go on to the direction, we're just talking certifications into the direction that you want to beyond that, whether that be cybersecurity, whether that be, AWS or Linux or, networking, that kind of thing. You go off into the different directions for that. Let's see here. And then the labs and quizzes are within that, and all your labs are going to be in there too. But like the document shows that I had for the announcement, um, it shows you everything on there too. Plus, it also has, I don't even see if it's open now. I'm really looking, I'm like all over the place with this. Here it is. I did add the PowerPoints. Okay, so like I said, the PowerPoints, they just have a little bit more information on there in the notes section. So it might be fun to look at that as you're going through different things, just to kind of relate information that's given to you. Okay, if I can keep up where I am. I think I'm done with all this. Let's just get into here. Um, all right, this is what we're open to. Now, yes, it does look big. It looks like a lot, but a lot of these, as you can see, are labs. So there's some reading, but there is labs. Let's get into it. And I'll give you a bunch of examples on the way. So operating systems, there are 9 specific functions to operating systems. When you think about it, operating system itself is the thing that keeps people, hardware, and software is an interface for people, hardware, and software all together. Okay, it makes it so that we can see it, do it, use it. Right? Graphical user interface is what we're looking at. The whole thing of the Windows Explorer system itself with all these windows, that's Windows Explorer, that is a graphical user interface. That's what we're doing and looking at with pictures and icons, images and videos and all that and sound. That is what we're doing. A command line interface is deep down to get into the back end of the system, typically to get into, if you had open source, you can go in there and make changes, things that you can add to. If you have a Linux system or an Ubuntu system, you do end up using a command line prompt more, or shell based. It's a bash shell based. You'll hear that often too when you're getting into that kind of stuff for networking and stuff like that. So that is where you go into the command line interface, the prompts. Now, operating systems, the functions are disk management, application management, service management, device management, access control and protection, Windows settings, Windows updates, and Windows registry with a registry edit. Stay out of the registry edit. If you take something out of the registry and you don't know what you took out of the registry, you probably should restart. It may give you an error, but it will typically with Windows go and put it back. Or you will have to find out what it is that you removed because it'll make whatever it is that was removed not function anymore. When you install something, it will put something into the register. That's what it is. It's a database of registered stored systems within the programs that you have. The keys and values that are used to be able to relate to each other. Okay. So that's what you're pretty much learning in this section here, and that's what that's for. But that's what an operating system does. It pretty much functions to carry all those files and apps and applications and systems. The whole thing is all in that operating system, right? That is really the basis of the function of the computer. Okay. So here's a video for them to explain it to you a little bit better in more layman terms, maybe too. I don't know. I try to do my best to give you not bodily functions, body parts of how to use it too, like what an operating system would be. CPU being the nervous system, I think is what I was saying. The hard drive is the brain with the operating system. And then, well, I guess the operating system kind of like, yeah, the CPU is kind of like the heart and the nervous system. I try to use more like that. And, files with, file cabinet and your hands are RAM. How many files can you hold in your hand before the RAM is like full and the files drop out of your hand before you can't fill any more in there? That's what RAM is considered. But I'll send you my book when I get done. Don't worry. Kidding. I've just always used those. Try to get layman with those that don't understand IT. It really helps. Operating system facts. So get into the facts a little bit more in depth and descriptions of everything. So you the graphic user interface, command line prompts, interface between applications and hardware, and the other functions that the operating system takes care of. The operating system types, of course, workstations, which would be desktops, laptops, and of course, servers, mobile devices. They all use it. Cars use it. Let's see, refrigerators have it. My air fryer has an operating system in it. Why I have an air fryer with an operating system that I can Wi-Fi to, I still don't understand, other than it telling me something's done. Okay, well then go ahead and cook it for a little bit more now on low. Your toothbrush has one. Absolutely. It's all the same, right? I'm telling you, it's ridiculous. But when you think about it, those chips have gotten very small, haven't they? All right, Windows settings. You cover that and the facts of a Windows setting. This is what you see when you click on your start and then go to settings. You'll see something like this. And then you can deep dive as you go through because then the window changes and gets to be even more information, right? That's got to do with this. And this is what your options are. Windows registry. This is what the registry looks like. And again, uh, by making small changes to the registry, you can customize just about any aspect of your machine. That said, it's a bad idea to change a registry key unless you understand exactly what it does and how it will affect the system. I've been in here twice a long, long, long time ago before YouTube was my best friend. And I did it with exact instructions because I was not going to go in the registry, and it had to do with something having to get rid of. You can come in here and you can change things in here, such as password codes and different things that maybe it's too deep to get to. I don't know. I can't even remember what it was. It was something so scary, and but I didn't lose it in here. This is not where I actually got a blue screen. I'll show you where I got a blue screen. We'll cover that in a minute. But registry you don't want to mess with. It's just one of those that it's like it is really the system itself. And you want to make sure you have it. Now, there is a time where you have to go in there for something, but again, use YouTube where you know you can count on that information or something of the instructions that are more specific to you being able to do that with, because you just don't want to mess with it. Explore your Windows 10 operating system. And we have a lab, change your Windows settings, and a lab, explore your iOS, and a lab, and a quiz. So you can see right there, that was a lot already gone. More system software. So this is the software itself and how it uses like utility software, how it has devices, device drivers, firmware, the apps. This is where you're getting into BIOS and CMOS, your post power on self test, the UFI virtualization. We'll get into that a little bit too, and a virtual machine. System software, software facts. Okay, utility software, it explains what that is, device drivers and how that's used. Device drivers are important. Luckily, we don't have to deal with them anymore. It used to be where we always had a disk that came with what it is that we were using. And typically now you might still get a disc once in a while. Like my son just rebuilt his, and he had a motherboard and a CPU and a GPU, a graphics card. None of them came with a disc. And he was like, "Well, I don't know how to set this up and this and that." And I said, "Don't worry, everything will step on its own, and Windows will do it for you. It's not like back in the day when I did it on Windows, like on 95. Okay, let's just say on 95 is really when I started getting into really working on the and building computers. I had to have a device driver for everything. So something came with a disk, whether it be floppy or CD. Now, one of the first ones that we had gotten from Micro Center was a desktop we bought from Micro Center. And we decided we were going to go ahead and reformat it and build off two. Now, mind you, the hard drives back then in 95, it was like 500 megs was big because everything you used was kilobytes back then. Um, so to have even the games, everything so a 500 meg hard drive was huge. Okay. Um, so we reformatted it. We were going to make half of it for one thing and half of it for, like, we wanted to use part of it as just a file itself, just like you can format your hard drives. You can take pieces of it to do certain things, right? That's what they call dual booting too. You can put one operating system on one, format the other operating system with something else on it, and you dual boot those and you decide which one you're going to boot up. But then you have to get in the BIOS. So there's a lot that goes to that. I don't want to give you too much, but you'll learn a lot of that in here. Yes. So we had a printer. Okay, we had our printer set up with that too. But this hard drive, we were trying to reformat it, and when we reformatted it, when we brought it back, it was saying that we had some bad sectors in there. So seriously, boxes, yeah, 521 megs of RAM. I'm telling you, yeah, 12. It it was something just to get that. I mean, you're like, oh my God, I just got this RAM, and everybody's like, ooh, wow, and you're like, you look at it now, like I got 2 terabytes and like I feel great, but literally I've only got not even 500 gigs on there, of memory. I'm not even using my 2 terabytes. That's just it. So compared to what it was back in the day, it's just crazy. My kids, they're like full. I'm like, you guys, you need to clean out your hard drives, guys. Seriously, that's crazy. But the gaming does that, right? So, okay, so we had bad sectors on there. So every time we did that, we would slowly start adding things onto it, and then we would check the hard drive, like clean it, and it would say you have bad sectors again and again and again. So finally came to the point where we realized that the printer driver was causing the problem. So that's the thing. It was this CD version of the printer driver that was the problem. We had to use the floppy version of the printer driver to make it work and not have bad sectors. So it wasn't that there was bad sectors, like there was something bad with the hard drive and the hard drive was bad and had to be thrown away. It was that little portion of that device driver was causing bad sectors on there, which could have just been fine if we had just put the floppy in and put on there and said, hey, remove and add, it would have been fine. But we went into it, we went through 3 different hard drives. We even got the guy who works on computers and stuff. He was all confused. He didn't know what was going on. It's just a whole thing. Like now, all you have to do is buy the computer. My son hooked it up to the internet, and Windows did the whole thing. He didn't have to figure out one thing. He didn't have to go in the BIOS. He nothing. He went into BIOS simply to make sure that everything was correct, and just because he wanted to. And that's really what it's got, right? Yeah, exactly, they're integrated. And that was the smartest thing Windows did was to be more like Mac, right? Be more like Apple. Apple has always been that way. Apple, you get what you get is Apple, and you can't use anything else. Microsoft, it's not that Microsoft is all Microsoft now. Microsoft was smart and said, we're going to make sure that all your device drivers are available. That means companies are starting to make sure that their device drivers are available. So if you stick to name brands, which can get expensive, but if you stick to name brands and standard device drivers and plug and plays, you won't have that much trouble when it comes to the device drivers anymore. So that's really gotten to the point. It's really thinned out in that sense of what that's used for. Yeah. 125 terabytes. My gosh. Wow. Well, it's needed for something. Databases, most likely. Bitcoin is what it's used for, right? Because that takes up so many resources. I know, just for our convenience, right? And we still complain when it takes too long to get on the internet. Yeah, databases are the goal. Exactly. So this one will explain to you a little bit more about your settings, File Explorer, Task Manager, and Device Manager. Um, what Windows settings? I was trying to find, what is it? Computer. There's a little box. Is it device? It's not Device Manager. It's not File Explorer, Windows Settings, Task Manager. There's one, it's not Computer Manager. Computer Manager? It's not Control Panel. Nope. Nope. something, and we'll get into the virtualization, but I forgot to look and see what it was. It's not device manager, disk management. Not computer manager. All right, I'll find it. Okay, so shows you how to update drivers with what you have now and how to go about doing that. And now we talk about the boot process. So the boot process is back in the day when you started your computer, sometimes you'd hear a beep, right? That's a beep code. And it was specific to something going on. And that beep meant that it was okay. Everything was good to go. What it does, it activates the BIOS. We check the CMOS, right? And then we initialize the hardware. So it's checking to see that everything's good, fans, memory, hard drives, and processors, right? And then it's posting to each one of them. It's shooting around, and this is within seconds, should be within seconds, before it starts getting in the operating system because it has to find the operating system once it goes through and checks all that. It says here, on many computers, the BIOS reports the results of the post with a beep code. I have not heard a beep, and I would say probably over 20 years when I was building these computers. I don't remember a beep anymore. A single beep means everything is fine. If there's a problem, it plays a combination of beeps, and the combination of beeps means something every time. So that's something to look into also. The business Commodore, yeah, that was my uncle had a Commodore 64, and that's what got me started. And that was they had the tape decks as the backup. Remember those? Okay, so find an operating system. It's what it's going to do. And then it's going to load the operating system into RAM and start your hard drive running. All right. Basic input output system. That's your BIOS. Okay, so it's going to explain to you exactly what BIOS does, a little bit more in depth. And then, of course, the UFI is a graphical boot tool that utilizes. So now instead of BIOS, they're using the UFI now. A lot of computers are using this now. It is still a BIOS, but it's replaced it. It doesn't, okay, so it doesn't replace the BIOS, but it does work configuring the BIOS for the end user. Okay, so it's kind of working together. BIOS and CMOS, clearing the CMOS, which, like I said, my son did not have to do the CMOS. He didn't have to clear CMOS or check the BIOS itself. It all did it on its own, which is pretty cool, which is really nice. Spending money on it better work for itself, right? A way to find your BIOS settings, there's a few different ways that you can find that, as it showed us. Clear CMOS settings. And that's what I was telling my kids, because as they were building the computer, I wanted them to see on there. Since I built them, it was easy enough for me to go ahead and show it to them so they don't have to watch. Although he did watch some YouTube videos so that he knew how to go ahead and put together what it is that he had already purchased. He wanted me there hands on so that, we did it correctly. It's one thing to watch one, but it's really another thing to be able to stand there and hands on put the machine together. But I could show him the pins, just touch these little pins right here and it'll clear your CMOS. Or move these pins over to here, and depending on the motherboard that you have, certain ways to clear that CMOS. Or take the battery out, 30 seconds, put the battery back on, clears your CMOS. Certain ways, but what's nice is now looks like you don't have to. If you get an older computer, you might, but it looks like you don't have to because it really does a lot of it on its own. Update the firmware and virtualization. So virtualization to virtual machines, like we talked about for the discussion, VirtualBox will help you create a virtual machine. And this means that you will have to have virtualization on, which you can do through the BIOS. There are a few different ways to do this, and I was hoping that it would show. There's one specifically that is a little pop-up window, so it's not. It's not computer management. System management. System management. Is it? No. I'm just trying to see what that little box is that comes up. It's just a little one. System management, system manager. It's not what it is. It's not what they call it. Um, I'm surprised they're not showing it here. Because like we have all these windows, Windows has different boxes for everything, like the task manager. So I thought it would be system manager. It's not computer manager. Because you can just get in there and turn on and off your virtualization and won't have to go into BIOS. That's why, and it may show you in the video. I just thought it would really tell you enable VT in the BIOS, creating virtual machines. What are they using? Hyper-V and dynamic memory. So that's BIOS. All right, and then quiz. Okay. So file management, explaining to you, of course, your files. There's some facts about it, how it's going to use different files. Windows uses the C drive, of course, and you do have a D and an E, and depending on how many hard drives you have on there or flash drives, you'll have different naming values for different parts, right? But typically C is the main one. And then you create new folders, you create new files, file between folders, and moving files between folders, and permissions. You can add passwords to files and folders, making them they can be full control, giving permissions to people as well. They have full control, read, write, modify, or just, they're just readable. The extensions, the different types of files that are available. A Linux file management is a little different because some of this can be used using a command prompt, right? So you'll do something like changing directory, CD, change directory, to Pascal, not CD Pascal. Depends on how that's written. Is it when you made that directory, is it um, uppercase or lowercase? That's where you have to get very specific for the command prompt lines. I think that's it. Is it Windows features? If I can spell right. Features. It's hard to tell. Windows. It's Windows features, but it's Windows Manager. Maybe it's Windows Manager. Windows. Let's try that one. I I'll find it. Might be a week from now, and suddenly it'll pop into my head. I have to go back into the other stuff that I had from the last um desktop manager. Nope, it's not that either. Um, he's bringing me to Bing. That's what I don't like now. Hyper-V is Windows features that can turn on and off via a control panel. It's not the control panel. That's just it. And that's what's driving me crazy. Let me see. WinX. Maybe it'll pop up on WinX over here. See, I keep thinking it's computer management, but it's not. Um, I want to show you, but it will not come up. No, this manager is not it. It'll get it. I mean, it is Windows features, but why is that Windows features not coming up like that? Supposed to go in here and say Windows features, and I keep getting bang, and I don't like that. All right. Okay. And they're not explaining it to you in here. They're not showing you the little window. It's just a little box. It's literally just like a tiny box. Okay. Managing files and folders, assigning files permissions, and then copying files to a USB thumb drive, NTFS permissions. So this is a new technology file system that came on after Windows 95. We started using the new technology, which is, of course, Windows New Technology 3.1. So that's when they started the NTFS. Before that, they were FAT32 is what it was called, files. Where that came from, the FAT means something. So there was a reason for it. But that's what we called them. And that's what we used. File permissions, so read-only files and different overall NTFS permissions, inherited permissions, file attributes, archive, and different things like that. Uh, so configure NTFS permissions, command line, and using that. That'd be nice to learn that. And PowerShell commands, Linux shell commands. This is where the fun comes in. And then let's see, application software. We're going to get into different application software. We use software for a million different things. We're using it all the time, no matter what we're doing. And that can mean that there's different types of software, such as productivity, collaboration, business. Netiquette is how we standardize yourself, to rules of etiquette while using this software on the internet. Windows applications, Windows 10 apps, and the App Store is what you'll be covering. Productivity software, in other words, stuff like Windows, Microsoft Word and word processing, spreadsheets, presentations, accounting. Well, that's more for businesses where they have that listed, but visual programming, collaboration, like what we're doing. We're using Zoom. You can use Google Meet. There's email, calendaring, instant messenger, business software. Um, This would be like enterprise software for databases, project management, accounting, graphic design. Let's see, app stores. Of course, we know the app stores, right? And app distribution. Apple Store, Amazon, Google Play, Microsoft. Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's still not that window. I just can't figure out that window. It's driving me crazy. It will drive me crazy. I'll figure it out tonight. You just see. I will start asking my interns. Somebody tell me, please. managing desktop applications, uh, desktop application facts, common Windows applications. They basically run applications, search for applications. You can add them to start menu, add them to taskbar. It's not the command prompt. Nope. Nope. You use the command prompt to call up that one. You won't use the command prompt. Well, the command line to call it up, but use desktop applications. Let's see, Word, a lot of this, and PowerPoint, and a quiz. Okay, printing. It's going to go over about printing, device drivers, shared drivers, print jobs, and print queue. So you'll understand printers a little better and the features, facts, 3D printing. That's a good one too. Learn a little bit more about 3D printing itself and how they're making things now. Car parts, all kinds of different things, using it. NASA's using it. So, I mean, this is great. I love this topology that it has now that it's building off of too. Build your state in plastic. The topology of it. Install and configure a local computer, and where you can have it networked. Like my kids can print something from their room across the house, and it pops up in here in my room and scares me to death. I was like, what the heck machine is going on? Oh, we're just printing something. Great, thanks for letting me know. Probably shouldn't put it here in my room. Software troubleshooting, always good to know, because if your system crashes, you want to be able to fix it yourself using YouTube, right? And not having to pay somebody $100 an hour to fix it for you. That's really what it comes down to. Software troubleshooting steps, crashes, the slowness, system crashes, the blue screen of death. Typically now, though, whatever is removed will be replaced because Windows got smart and puts a little piece of it in the hard drive. So that way it will restart having fixed the issue. It will ask you, do you want to fix it or do you want to do a whole new setup? And you can decide for yourself what you want to do. But that's one thing you don't want is the blue screen. And of course, the red screen, right? The malicious software, troubleshooting software problems and the steps, how to force close a program, and verifying your fixes. Using Task Manager, which pretty much tells you about your computers. If you have a 10 o'clock, you can go ahead and pop out if you need to. But I'm going to go on just to kind of finish it up a little bit. Yes, command prompt's very strong. Um, CPU, it'll tell you about your system on here, but it tells you the processes, the performance, app history, startup. You can turn some of those off so it doesn't take so long to start up. The users, details, and services. Propose purpose and uses of Task Manager. So you can go in there and shut something down that's running right now that's taking up time or that's not functioning or says to wait for it. Task schedule is good because if you put a task schedule, you schedule the your we call it your antivirus definitions to be renewed. You want to make sure that those are updated all the time. So task schedule is good for that. Manage applications, repair programs, how to go about doing that with that, and then a quiz, and then careers. So from there, you don't have to do careers if you don't want to. You can save all that for later. So it's all one big topic in itself. That might help, or you can do it now, but I can't remember what it is that's going to happen back near the end where we're going to do all the career ones. Yeah, in here, I don't know if we're doing 11, but somewhere in here it's going to work. 9, 10. I think it's 10. We'll go through all the career ones. So that's it. Have a great rest of the evening. Creative Linux style command line is, yeah, lines. Yes. Yeah, Linux is real easy to use when you go into the command line and pull things up like that. Absolutely. Um, Virtualization. If I'm asking for the right thing here, I don't think so. It's find it. Have a good night, everybody. Good night. Have a great week. I'll find it and I'll get back to you guys. This is crazy. It's something that's going to drive me crazy. I know it. Have a good night, everybody.